This morning's reading is from Living Love by Wayne Dyer. How may I serve? Asking this question can turn your life around. Thinking of others first, reaching out to them despite how it might inconvenience you, causing you to feel joy. This gift of feeling good or feeling God within comes from serving and surrendering rather than asking and demanding. There's no room for blame in your life as long as you live with kindness. Blaming your past, blaming the economy, blaming your perceived personal flaws, blaming God, blaming your parents, blaming your children or your spouse, blaming your DNA. There's no shortage of circumstances, people, and events to blame, and there's no shortage of blame itself. When you shift to compassion, all blame disappears. So no matter what you may want for yourself, discover how you can want it more for someone else, and then make that shift. In that contemplative moment, compassion will eradicate finger pointing, and you'll begin to think like God thinks, serving, offering, giving, and loving freely. I've certainly found that when I remember to nurture kindness and courtesy, everything in my life seems to move toward more harmony and peace. To say nothing of how much better I feel when I'm giving rather than wanting.
Thich Nhat Hanh wrote this: "Love is a mind that brings peace, joy, and happiness to another person. Compassion is a mind that removes the suffering present in another." We all have seeds of love and compassion in our minds, and we can develop these energies. We can nurture the unconditional love that does not expect anything in return. We have that honor and we have that privilege as human beings to be able to do that. Personally, I understand compassion as unconditional love. The giving of ourselves for no reason other than giving of ourselves with no expectation. To be in service to all of humanity. On a deep level, I believe that we are all absolutely aware that every choice we make has an impact on other people. That there's a profound connection between our lives and the lives of all the other human beings on this planet, be they in Africa or Iraq or living on the street corner. And we are called to be compassionate in all situations. I was reading some recent research study on the internet, which we all know is true, as Gina pointed out. But what they're saying now in the research is that compassion is actually something that is embedded in our brains. It's in there, it is innate, it is part of who we are. As human beings, we are wired to respond to others in need. And when we feel compassion toward others, they say, they experience a chemical reaction in themselves, in their brain, and then they in turn become more compassionate. Don't you see where that's true though in your life? When you're kind to someone, it kind of takes them aback for a second, and then that brings that compassion out in them as well, so they can pass it on. So it's really important to remember practicing compassion is not always for others, for everyone else. It's for ourselves as well. It changes us. Jack Kornfield reminds us of this: if your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. A lot of us are okay with being compassionate toward other people, but boy, are we hard on ourselves. Is that true? Absolutely it is. And here's why it's really important. Because scientific studies suggest there are some really important physical benefits to cultivating and practicing compassion. People who practice compassion produce 100% more DHEA which is that hormone that counteracts aging, and 23% less cortisol, which is the hormone they call the stress hormone. So we can live longer with less stress. I'm in. Right? Also, practicing compassion gives us a strong social connection, and that leads to a 50% chance of longevity. Compassion strengthens our immune system. It helps us recover from diseases faster. Now, I'm going to talk about Jean Holmes and Nancy. Two people that with all the love and all the support and all the compassion from their friends, their relatives, and this community have been able to heal themselves to a point where it's non-existent anymore. And I know that comes from the love and the compassion that they feel and experience. There are emotional and spiritual benefits to practicing and cultivating compassion as well. Practicing compassion, being compassionate, makes us happier. We feel better. We feel good, and it brings, when we feel good, it brings that happiness and that feel good to everybody else around us. No one likes to be around grumpy. And it just lifts you up when you're around somebody who's compassionate and kind and generous. And since it's the common name for all of us to be happy, it's important to use compassion as a tool to achieve that and to share that. Compassion boosts our well-being. It increases our sense of connection to others. And I'm not talking just in this room. I'm talking to life, people, humanity. And do you know that those people who feel more connected have a lower rate of anxiety and depression? And that just makes logical sense, doesn't it? I can't think of any better reasons to adopt a compassionate lifestyle. We get to live longer, we get to be happier, right? And less stress. Now, the key to developing compassion is to make it a daily practice. Is that sweet? We want to make it a daily practice. We want to wake up in the morning with thank you. Here's what the Dalai Lama does. I love this. It's a great way to start your day. Today, I'm fortunate to have woken up. I am alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. I'm going to use all my energies to develop myself, to expand my heart out to others, to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. I'm going to have kind thoughts toward others. I am not going to get angry or think badly about others. I'm going to benefit others as much as I can. It's a heck of a way to start your day, don't you think? But it puts you in that place of kind, compassion, caring. It opens your heart up. To cultivate compassion is to develop that awareness, the awareness of our fellow human beings, and understand that they too have stuff. You aren't the only one with issues. Are you shocked? Everybody has stuff. It's just a different pile of stuff. Sometimes we get so caught up and centered on ourselves that we forget that. We lose sight that other people have things going on in their life. We lose sight that other people may have needs of their own that we could help with, that we could participate in with them. When we do something for someone else, it shifts our self-focus to other focus. Think about a time when you were feeling down and pretty lousy about things, and maybe a close friend or a relative or someone you really cared about called you for an immediate help with a situation that came up and they were really upset about it. If you remember, you likely had your attention shift into helping them, forgetting about your own stuff. That's kind of what happens when somebody is in need. And rather than feeling down, you may have felt really energized because you were in a space to be able to help somebody else, to give of yourself. And before you knew it, you probably felt better. And maybe even had a new perspective on your thing, on your stuff. That's what compassion does. It opens us up. It's easier to be compassionate when instead of recognizing differences among each other, we focus on our sameness, what it is we have in common with everybody else. Because at the core, we're all human beings. We're all the same. We need food, shelter, and love. We crave attention. We crave recognition and affection. And we all desire to be happy and to feel good. All of us do. We have that in common. When you reflect on these commonalities you have with every other human being, you can't help but be compassionate when they're not at their highest. I came across a really great exercise from an article I read. And it's a 5-step process to use when you meet people, be they friends or relatives or strangers. Maybe it's somebody who's not showing up happy. Maybe it's somebody who appears angry when in reality generally that's hurt and fear coming through. And so with your intention focused on this person, you want to say to yourself, because if you said it out loud it might be goofy, all right? Just like me, this person is seeking happiness in their life. Just like me, this person is trying to avoid suffering in their life. Just like me, this person has known sadness, loneliness, and despair. Just like me, this person is seeking to fill their needs. And just like me, this person is learning about life. And isn't that true for everybody across the board? It's one of the few blanket statements you'll ever hear me make, because it is true for all of us as human beings. This exercise works really well, especially when you're running into someone who might not be pleasant, right? Brings you back to, you know what, they're human just like I am. They have stuff just like I do. And you recognize, it's that namaste, right? I'm recognizing that God in you. That is also in me. When you do this kind of exercise, I'm going to tell you what, energy shifts. Not just for you, for them too. It can't help it. It's the beauty. Ram Dass said this, I would like to be a statement of love and compassion. And where it isn't, that's where my work is. Now, that's a really big statement. And it hit me particularly hard this morning. Because there is a situation in my life where I'm not real compassionate very often. And that's where my work is. So that line from Ram Dass was for me, not you. Just saying. Think about that though, right? That's where your work is. Practicing compassion, cultivating that compassion, boosts our well-being, and it helps to broaden our perspective beyond ourselves. How many of you know about the story of these two Los Angeles County deputy sheriffs? Okay, not very many. Wow, okay. That's okay, you guys don't watch the news, good for you. It's all good. Well, this happens to be a very happy story. So pull out the tissue. The guy on the left, his name is George. And George had a very rare liver disease. He was diagnosed last year. And he's been on a list for liver donor, waiting for a liver donor. And they said that if he didn't get one, that he would be die by the end of this year. That's just the way it was. My understanding is that there is a really long list for liver donors, and up to 500 people a year in California alone die waiting. Well, none of his family were a match. Nobody. And he was on that very long waiting list. One day, Javier, who's on the left, he and George were on the treadmill and talking, and Javier said, "Hey, how's it going?" He said, "Oh, fine." He said, "No, really." And he told him, if I don't get this transplant, I'm going to die. He's got a wife and 2 young kids, just to make the story a little more heartfelt. And he said, and Javier, without a thought, said, "Oh, I'll give you mine. I'll share mine with you." He's like, "Hey, don't even kid about that kind of thing." He said, "I'm not kidding." Well, as it turns out, he was a perfect match. Perfect match. So George here was a little surprised at why Javier would do this. And he said, "Because I am not going to go to your funeral knowing I could have helped." Yeah, I told you, Kleenex. He donated 60% of his liver to George. A real tearjerker was George introduced Javier to his children, and he said, "I get to see you grow up. I get to be a part of your life because of this man." What a gift. When asked why he did it, Javier said, "It's because it's the way I choose to live my life. Do unto others as you would want them to do unto you." That is compassion in action. Now, surgery was last week, was very successful, all is well. And that story is miraculous on so many levels, right? What were the odds of being on a treadmill at the same time? We'll start there. A stranger instead of a family member is a perfect match. Javier was so willing, without a thread of hesitation, to literally give of himself to somebody else that he considered a brother. The fact that the surgery was a success, to me, is miraculous. That both men, within 2 weeks, will be back to work. And what the doctor said really stunned me is that both of their livers will grow back to normal within 2 months. Is your body amazing or what? I mean, that's just huge to me. What causes people to jeopardize their own health, their own well-being, to help others? What is it that inspires people to give their time, their energy, and their money to aid in the betterment of others, even when they don't receive anything tangible in return? Altruistic behavior, compassion, the unselfish concern for other people. That's what it is. It includes doing things simply out of the desire to help, not because you're obligated, but because you want to, because your heart says, yes, this is mine to do. And then you move forward and you do it. That's the power of a compassionate approach to life, which is truly, truly thinking of others first and living by the golden rule. So practice doing something compassionate every single day. Anything, just to get somebody to smile, to let people know somebody cares, whether you know them or not. That's insignificant. Let people know you care. Smile, a kind word, do an errand or a chore for someone. Be available when somebody needs to talk and needs someone to listen to them. Those things are all very significant when somebody's in a space of need. Never underestimate the power of a smile, a kind word, or even a small action. It's huge. Compassion is contagious. I know you've seen that. Acts of generosity and kindness beget more generosity and kindness. It's like a chain reaction. You've either seen or participated in one of those chain reactions. When someone pays for the coffee in front of you, for the driver behind them, and then that driver pays for the one behind them, and on and on and on. Those reports of generosity, of kindness behavior, has gone on for hours. And if you have been the recipient or the participant in one of those, you know how good that feels. Giving and receiving. It's all this part of that same process. Our acts of compassion, whether it's big or small, uplifts others. And by uplifting others, we feel good too. It's a win-win. And then that compassion, that happiness, that love, that generosity, it spreads everywhere. And here's the really great news. Cultivating compassion does not require intense study. Anyone can do it. All you need to do is think of something, anything, and do it. Let your heart be your guide. Begin your day with gratitude and with compassion. Make it a practice when you wake by thinking about someone else. And then making a decision to actively do something, anything, that will bring a smile to that person. When you become conscious of wanting to do something kind for another human being, you move into that higher way of being. It makes sense, right? We lift ourselves up by doing that. Wayne Dyer tells us that when we do that, it takes those thoughts off, what's in it for me, and shifts it to how may I serve. And then guess what happens? In turn, the universe says to you, how may I serve you? Your good deeds don't go unnoticed by life. When you're aligned with that idea of compassion, your entire day will reflect that consciousness. That's just how everything's going to go for you that day. Guaranteed. If it doesn't work, talk to life, not me. It does work. Absolutely, without question. And so I want to close with this thought this morning. By being and living compassion, you invite and encourage others just by your example to choose to do the same. And the world becomes a kinder, more loving place. Thank you for being here while I shared this truth as I understand it.